All right. Welcome, everyone, to episode 166 of the Fantasy Timeline. Proud member of the Dynasty Addicts podcast network here. I'll be, I guess, filling in as uh, more of a host tonight, I
The
guess.
MC.
It'll prove one way or the other, the host with the most. So I'm Drew at dr_PRA, and I'm here with one of our original hosts and creators of the show, Bill at Super Dupaflex. Bill, how's the week been?
Good. You know, the Lions won, so that's always nice. Actually, all of our teams won, so that's
You
a,
did.
a positive, and all won pretty handily. So, yeah, it's a good week for football. Probably my worst week of fantasy.
Mm,
My my teams, I was 500 basically, so it's been it's
okay.
pretty solid overall. But I was 11-11. Some of my leagues do versus the median, so like you get double
Yep.
hit when you have a bad week, you know. So
Yep.
I was actually in those four leagues, I was 0-8 basically. So yeah, so it hits you
You
pretty
got
hard.
any undefeated teams left for you out of the 22?
Yeah, so I have 17 leagues actually, and
Okay.
the I want to say I have 3 or 4 undefeated. Um, I really don't know actually.
Nice.
There's
Do you
definitely
know
a
any? Yeah, go ahead. Any common themes there?
say that again.
Any common themes or common players between the leagues?
Um, y- no, I mean the ones with like it's interesting. Like the ones that I really have that I just went hard at wide receiver and completely neglect running back. Those are the ones that are doing the best. So like
Nice.
all of the ones I went like complete zero RB. With like Raheem Mostert and um, Zach Moss and
Yep.
Jerome Ford. All the players like that seem to be doing the best, which makes sense, right? Because we've had a lot of underperforming running backs this year, and the elite wide receivers for the most part are doing pretty well, or at least keeping you afloat. So
Yeah.
um, yeah. How about yourself?
I'd have to go back and take a real count. I'd say I think I was over 500. I've got about between I think a couple of redraft leagues and then mostly dynasty, somewhere around probably maybe 600 this week.
Okay.
A little better than 500. I've had a couple of teams that I was lucky that had both David Montgomery and Cole Kmet this week, so those teams did pretty well. I've had some luck happen where I forget which league it was. I eked one out by a point or less this week as well. So a little bit of luck went my way. So overall, season's going pretty well. Knock on wood, haven't hit too many major injuries. I'd say probably the biggest hardship I've had this year is I've got a couple leagues with Jonathan Taylor in them. So just kind of riding that out. But yeah, overall, it's been a good start. So, and then, yeah, I think I've only got maybe one or two that go against the median, and one of them is a Scott Fish, and so far I'm 8-0 there. But then there's one that I joined last year. Um, I think was it really Truther? I forget who it was that one of the listeners here that started a small Debbie league and joined that, and definitely brand new to that arena, and it's showing. So,
Yeah.
I'm hoping in a year or two maybe I'll have something there.
Sure.
But yeah, overall it's been fun. So speaking of Jonathan Taylor, though, we'll start with just a quick bit of news. We got a few folks that are eligible to come off the pup list pretty soon. Him being one here. We've got Cooper Kupp, who apparently is getting ramped up, allegedly for some action this week. And then Kyler Murray's going to hit his window soon too. I think to be able to come back soon. So I think based on what the teams are telling us, Cooper Kupp seems the most likely to play sooner than later, I suppose. But I guess what are you expecting from any of these three guys? Anybody that you're paying more attention to than the others?
I think the one I'm most confident is going to play is Cooper Kupp. It sounds like the injury wasn't as bad as we initially thought, and this is just a way that they, the fact that he's out practicing, fully practicing now, is a good sign. I just have concern about Taylor. We have Josh and I have him in the OG league, and I don't feel super confident that even if he comes back, he's going to play the whole season. So that's my biggest concern with him. And Kyler, who the hell knows, right? Like, I mean, it's really an odd situation because, I mean, would they really be doing that much better with Kyler playing right now than Dobbs? And
I don't know.
I mean, you got to think Kyler wants to get back. But how many has Arizona won? 1 or 2?
I want to say just.
Yeah. I'm not sure. So I think, but anyway, like, I mean, there's a chance that they're going to actually win too many to actually get a good quarterback. So that might be good news for Kyler long term, but I have to imagine they're going to give him all the chance in the world to heal, and don't put him out there too quickly. You got a lot of money invested in him, and you feel, you have a capable quarterback. I mean, Dobbs looks fully adequate, like, I mean,
Yep.
more so than a lot of the team's quarterbacks, to be honest. So he fits their scheme, whatever, and he's running just enough. And Hollywood Brown looks like an actual, everybody was discounting him so much because of the concerns at quarterback. And he looks like he's not at his peak with like a great quarterback playing, but he's still like a guy you can put in your starting lineup and feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
And there was early in the season, I was not starting him sometimes because I was worried, but now it's just, he's an automatic click. And so that's good. So I would say the Kupp is the one I feel most comfortable with, like, that I feel like we're going to get a season out of him. The other ones, I'm just a little less confident in that. You have any strong thoughts on that?
Yeah, as far as guessing who's going to play more or less, I think we've talked all along, is Jonathan Taylor going to really give it all if he does get out on the field? I think he's probably in a position to make some business decisions when he's out there. Very different than when, other guys maybe are on a contract year and they're laying it all out on the field trying to get the next contract. Kupp, I still have concerns with a 30-year-old that's had, he re-aggravated this again right before the season started. Soft tissue is not something that is typically something fun to live with. You have Mike Evans, who's got a timely bye right now. And people are still concerned whether he'll come back at 100% for week 6. And that's something that he's fought for his career. But I think the range of values for guys like JT and Kyler make them interesting trade pieces. So, those are a couple guys that whether you have them or whether you want them, I think it's worth starting to kick the tires a little bit and maybe put them out there and see what you can get. Can you get multiple firsts for Jonathan Taylor still, or, can you get them on a discount?
I was listening to the Dynasty Nerds today, and they were talking about a trade where there was 2 later first-round picks for JT, which I feel is okay. Like, I don't necessarily know. Like, are you looking to move him before, like just when he like maybe he's going to play this week? Do you prefer to move him? Because, like, it could be really interesting if he plays with Richardson, that could be like a match made in heaven, but then there's all the background noise that's like, I mean, it's a risk, right? So is it somebody that you want to get out of while you can, or is it something like, okay, I have a contender, I want to trade for him, or I don't know. Like,
I'm
I
pretty
don't know
well
what the
holding
right
at this
answer is.
point. Yeah, I'm pretty well holding. I mean, I'd have to get, I think in a super flex league, a 12 team or something like that, if I got a couple of firsts thrown at me for him, I would be, no matter what my build is, whether I'm contending or if I'm rebuilding, I think I'm comfortable taking that, because if I'm a contender, great, I can throw those first at other pieces if I need a starter 2-3 weeks from now. I'm not going to take anything less than that, because I mean I've hung on this long. And I think he's got enough value that once the dust begins to settle, or looks like it'll settle, I think his value will stay strong. It's not like he's coming back from a major injury or something like that. So I would expect that even if it takes longer than we would like it to, you'll be able to get good value, or better, closer to market value, once we know kind of what direction it's going, whether something's going to work out with the Colts. And, I would love to see him with Richardson, and looks like, that'd be a really, really fun combination in the backfield there. Or if he goes to another team that maybe is an actual NFL contender, where he could get, 60, 70% of the touches week in and week out. So I think for me, it's mostly hold. If I can get him for less than 2 firsts, I'm definitely entertaining that as well. Again, whether I'm contender or not, if there's a possibility either way that he could help you. If you're contending, he'll come back and he could put points on the board this year. If you're not contending, it's just as likely, I think, that he might sit out for a few more weeks, or be hit and miss and not really hurt you, even if it's a potential points league.
So like if you're like a playoff team, maybe not necessarily like the top contender, but you're a playoff team that's maybe a running back short, you're offering your first plus like a like, how would you do like a first, a second, and Khalil Herbert?
It's tough with the week Khalil Herbert just had, and if the Bears are going to keep going there,
or Madison, or a player like that, you know what I mean?
Like, yeah, I think a first, a second, and Madison, or a first, and even somebody like we talked about already, like a Hollywood Brown, maybe something like that. Somebody
like a first in Hollywood.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Because again, if I'm a running back short, I probably prefer not to give a running back up. I'd rather give, if I have another player, another position that's a little deeper. But yeah, I don't know that I don't want to give my 24 and 25 first for Jonathan Taylor right now, because I don't think that's going to be. I would have to feel a lot better about him coming back and producing right away. And I'd want this year to pay for the next 2 years then.
Yeah, exactly. It was interesting. I had I don't know where this came from. I don't know. Oh, we're talking about Cooper Kupp. In TradeX 3, one of the teams asked me if I was interested in Tyreek Hill and Diggs. And I have Kupp, so it's like, but he wanted Richardson from me, plus, and I'm just like, man, like, I'm pretty loaded at wide receiver. I have Chase, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Kupp, Marquise Brown. So, like, I feel pretty good about my wide receivers. Now, those are 2 elite guys, but I've slowly been building this team with, like, young players for the most part, with the exception of Kupp, that, like, I don't want to, like, all of a sudden put all my value into 2 old wide receivers. And me and Outhouse are the 2 top teams in that league right now by points scored. And he ended up trading for Diggs. He gave the guy his first and Raheem Mostert. So, like, because the guy's going to try to tank, but he's 2-2. So I think there's already 4 teams that are 0-4. So, like, that's an odd time. So, and that's actually a conversation to have, is like, sometimes when you decide to tank, it's not necessarily worth it, right? Like, if there's 12 teams in the league, there's already 4 0-4 teams that are scoring very few points. Don't you almost think like it's worth going the opposite way and get lucky in the playoffs? Or are you happy to tank and maybe get the 105?
I mean? That's not really tanking in my book. If you end up with the 5, 6, 7. If you end up in that middle 5 to 8 window,
I mean, you can still get a great player, but like, is the difference between the 105 and the 108 that different?
No, because I think there's a lot of movement. We've seen a lot of rookie drafts. People can move around between. You can move up from the 108 to the 105 or 6 a lot easier than you can launch yourself into a top 4 pick
Right.
Even this year, watching folks, I think maybe people put the tier at 105 with like Gibbs there, and there are a couple leagues that I was in where it was a kind of a round robin of whether it was a quarterback that was left, whether it was maybe JSN got taken a little bit early, something like that. So yeah, I think if you've already got a third of your league that's 0-4, 1-3, and they're already 50 to 100 points below you on the year, that's a lot to catch up with. You have to get pretty aggressive at trading a lot of things away, and you've got to really kind of settle in and commit to that, probably more than just this year too. So you gotta be on top of that probably sooner than later. And yeah, I would definitely, don't sell the farm to try to and delude yourself thinking you're going to get into to being a top 3 team necessarily. But yeah, if you can get into that last spot of the playoffs, you have no idea what can happen any given week. So I think at that point, since you're looking at 105 is your best spot, maybe you fluke your way to a 104, or you settle with, okay, I'm going to be 107, 108 most likely. Maybe I have a 109, 110 pick, and that means I got my buy-in back. And you shouldn't have to give up a lot of your future to get there.
Yeah. So that's kind of like one of the things that was kind of interesting to me. I'm happy to see him dump because now there's 5 teams that are tanking. Like,
yeah.
Now there's only 7 teams contending or competing for the championship this year. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm curious. Like, maybe I make a move for Tyreek Hill just to, like it's an arms race between me and Outhouse.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I mean, see what it costs, because I mean, Tyreek is going to put points on the board. So, and I forget, are the TA leagues, are they potential points, or are they just based on record?
So it varies. Position? I think that ours is potential points, but I think like one of the earlier ones is not.
Yeah. So if it's potential points, man, you can lean on that. Like Tyreek can go off for 40 any given week.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't know. I just hate putting like over compensating. You know what I mean? Like, why put more into like a 29-year-old wide receiver? Although amazing, like he's gonna get me 8 points more than Hollywood Brown on average, probably. But like at the end of the day, there's so much variance. Like, is it really going to end up being that much of a difference? And I have one of these really good players sitting on my bench that I'm not using, so.
Yeah.
But that's the battle we all deal with, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, those are first world problems, Bill. Do I go after and add, I add to Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra?
Well, and the fact that I have Herbert and Allen as my quarterbacks, and Richardson's on my tax tee right now. So, it's a fun team to. I find it took me like 3 years.
Let me ask you this: let's say it took the same assets to get Jonathan Taylor or Tyreek Hill on that team for you. Which one would you take?
Well, because I build my team, I would still go with the wide receiver just because.
Okay.
I can make do with running backs, and I'm not super confident that Jonathan Taylor is going to be there for me in the playoffs. So I'd rather trade for like Aaron Jones and Connor and, players like that don't cost me much. And, just kind of deal with it that way. I don't necessarily, I've really gotten to the point where I just don't like paying up for running back at all. It's a 1 year proposition now for me. And because you lose so much value, like Jonathan Taylor's lost value. Yeah. He's never going to have the value he had even last year, and he's never going to get it again. He's 24, right? By the end of this season, he'll be 25. And now everybody's like, oh, he's old. So I'm always playing the value game, at least where like I want to get out of players before they start depreciating, unless they're like the true greats of greats, like Tyreek and Diggs and Devontae and players like that just they're going to produce regardless. But it's that time of year, right, where you guys start kind of thinking about your teams. And like sometimes I don't like to pull the trigger too early either, because any of these guys can get hurt. And you can still make a decision to add a player later in the season. It might not be the one that's being offered to you right now, but maybe if you're in the position to where you're comfortable that you're going to make the playoffs and do all that,
yeah,
maybe it's not important to like make your team look super incredible right now. Like my running backs right now are Aaron Jones, Montgomery, Brian Robinson. So
yeah,
I'm totally fine just sitting back with those guys. I don't really need to spend up on like a Jonathan Taylor, I mean, if Kupp ends up not being able to play, maybe I'm going to be more interested in adding Tyreek,
yeah.
So like I want to wait till I have more information though, I guess, and go from there, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned some good players here, so we're gonna breeze through a quick good, bad, and ugly. We didn't totally prepare for this, but I'll start with somebody that we've been seeing kind of rise up the Twitter boards and some of the value charts here. Some pretty impressive start for CJ Stroud. I know Josh had him as his QB1 coming out of the draft this year. I think Richardson probably went the earliest out of most of the quarterbacks in most rookie drafts, especially in Superflex, based on kind of his upside in the rushing. But you see, was it 150 some odd passes so far that Stroud has had with no interceptions, 6 touchdowns? Does not look like a rookie on paper there. I think the first game was a little bit slow for him, just kind of settling in the last 3 weeks. He's really produced, at least for fantasy, even though, Houston is still Houston. But looking at the limited clips that I have from him, he looks like he is settling in pretty well, pretty early, and making some of these value guys, even the wide receiver position, look like they're worth something now. And even Robert Woods, right, as a veteran coming back, has been a little bit interesting if you're in deep leagues. So for rookie starts, CJ Stroud is somebody that I had tempered expectations for him. Have him on a couple teams, and he's been sitting on taxi. And I think I'm getting close to in a couple of these teams where I'm going to have to promote him from the taxi squad and start him as a QB2 in a couple of these leagues, and maybe make some decisions week to week. Anything you have, Richardson, like you said, on that on your team there in TA. If you were to go back and draft again, knowing what we know now 4 weeks in, do you still feel like Richardson is the ceiling play there? Do you?
Oh, for sure.
Do you feel like the gap is closed? Or
yeah, just with the way my team is built, right, with the Allen and Herbert, and then Goff's my backup. It's like, okay, do I really want another like player that I'm not sold has the high upside? I'm totally cool at the position, so why not shoot for the moon? And that's kind of why I picked him. I think I ended up with 4 Richardson, 3 Stroud, and 2 Young coming out of the rookie drafts. And then I traded one of the Strouds. So regretting that now. He definitely looks good. So, I mean, he kind of looks Joe Burrow-ish. Where he places the ball for the receivers. And that's why there's no picks. He's putting the ball like opposite of leverage, so he's giving the wide receivers chance to go get the ball away from the defender. And just, I mean, he looks really, really good. And the fact that they have playing at Ohio State, you always have this great offensive line, and they do not have a great offensive line. And he's doing this now. Like, what's he going to be if they ever get him an offensive line? Like, and I get it. Like, he's probably overshooting what he probably should be doing at this moment. And sometimes it happens. And then once defenses figure out where his weak points are and they start attacking those areas, he'll struggle a bit. But the fact that he can come out and do this right away, where we see so many, I mean, the system's really good for a quarterback. They're kind of running the San Francisco style offense, and definitely makes it easier for a quarterback who just makes the right decisions. And it sounds like he's doing that. So, it's exciting, man. I've actually looked at, you go on MFL and you can do the drop down menu to see what team has each player, you know.
Yep.
And so I dropped down to CJ Stroud, and I'm like, oh man, he's not going to trade me. You know, I'm looking to see who I can
Yep.
I can add a few Strouds, and it's like, I mean, it's getting to the point where there's less than 10 quarterbacks that I would rather have than Stroud.
Yeah.
I mean, like, is it that different to say Stroud or Trevor Lawrence?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, so, and a lot of people had him in the top 7 or 8. So, I mean, you got to imagine Richardson's already up there. He's averaging like 23 points or something a game, you know, and he hasn't even played a full game yet. So, or one full game maybe. But, yeah, it's he looks really good, and I'd almost like let's say you're a rebuilding team and you have Burrow. Could you make a move for like Burrow for Stroud plus? You know what I mean? Like, is that something you do?
I mean, I would do that. I think pretty quickly.
Like, what would the plus have to be?
If I have Burrow and I can get Stroud, and I think I can get anything on top of that. I mean, pick wise, if I could get a top 18 pick with it, it's like the top half of the second round.
And that's enough for you to make that move. That's wow.
Yeah, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, I've only got one league. I think I have 2 leagues with Burrow, so I am certainly open to that kind of a move for.
So if you're a contender, would you do that?
If I have Burrow?
Yeah. Like thinking about it the opposite way, is that something that you would do?
I mean,
for this year?
I would have no problem making that kind of a change out based on, how long is this calf going to linger? We'll see what happens after the bye week here. So,
So you Burrow and your Burrow and your late first. No,
it'd be Burrow and maybe my Burrow in a late second for maybe probably get a
swap seconds.
Swap seconds would probably be I could get there. I mean, ideally it would just be Burrow and maybe some a long shot on a rookie somewhere. People are high on like a Josh Downs or something like that. So I can get Burrow and a Josh Downs for Stroud in their early second.
Yeah, that's interesting. That would be a fun trade. That would be.
Yeah, that works out.
My brain isn't even computing this. It's just so. But that's something to think about, like, because I think people would do that just because of the Burrow being, Burrow's Burrow, and.
I kicked the tires in one league just to see how low somebody was on Burrow. They're rebuilding. So it's a 12-team. It's one of the safe leagues. So 12-team PPR 2.0 premium. But they made me a pretty poor offer for Zach Wilson after this last week because they need quarterback if they're going to contend. But I think they're going to turn the page here. But so I shot back Zach Wilson and a Baker Mayfield, who both have outscored Joe Burrow in this league at this point in the season. They rejected it, but
rightly so.
But I think depending on who you find with Burrow and how impatient they're getting, and especially I think a lot of people with Burrow as one of their quarterbacks thought that they'd be in a better spot by week 4 this year. So yeah, I am Burrow. It depends on where you put Burrow, right? I think Burrow for me, if I had to force rank him, he'd probably be QB 5 or 6 for me. I think a lot of other people have him maybe in the top 3 or 4. So I would say probably 6 is about right. If I were to list out all the quarterbacks, and if you're telling me Stroud is 4 to 5 spots off of him, why not? Especially if I can hedge with another pick next year.
Yeah, that's I'm trying to pull up like some rankings just to see, like, because who's your 4?
Stroud is
4 Lamar?
So if you go Allen, Mahomes, Hurts, yeah. So you got those top 3. Then I could go
Herbert?
between Herbert or Lamar for 4 or 5. 4A, 4B. Kind of pick your poison there. After that,
I see Burrow, Richardson, Lawrence, Tua, Stroud, Fields. Those are the next ones, and
so Burrow's probably Burrow's 6 then after Herbert and Lamar.
yeah, and
And then,
then
I mean, honestly, I could probably be convinced to take Richardson over Burrow
yeah,
if you're looking at upside.
and then you have Tua up there, or you?
I think I would have Tua in my top 10. I think based on the weapons that he has and how they've been producing. And yeah, we talked a little bit about the concussion concerns, and at the end of the day, it's football. Any given week, right? Anything can happen. So yeah, I would say Tua is probably in the top 10 there. If I had to choose between him and Lawrence, I mean, based on this year, I would take Tua. If I was in a startup now, I'd take Tua over Lawrence right now.
Is Stroud ahead of them?
Man, I think Tua and Stroud would be tough. I would take Stroud ahead of Lawrence, I think.
Okay. So he's at least at 9 for you. And do you have them above all of them above Fields?
I would. I
Yeah,
would.
me too.
Yep. I think
So-
Fields is right on that QB1 cusp.
Yeah,
So he's
so
probably in the
11 through 14 are at least in this. This is Fantasy Pros rankings, Dynasty. Fields, Prescott, Watson, Kyler. It gets kind of ugly, Like I'd
Yeah.
almost rather Kyler at that point,
Mm.
but I'm not super high on him either. It's just it's a
No.
kind of a funky area.
I would probably take Fields over Deshaun, Kyler,
And Dak.
who's and Dak. I mean, Dak is probably the safest.
I agree with that.
But Fields has the rushing upside, and then I mean, if these rumors come up where the Bears truly have either the top 2 picks or 2 of the top 3 picks this year, there's no way they're not getting Caleb.
Yeah, I
And
agree
then
with that.
and Fields, maybe he gets a fresh start somewhere, and I could see him having some, kind of rejuvenation and renaissance for a couple of years somewhere else. So I would bet on that more than Deshaun Watson. I think fully getting back to his peak. Dak ever getting to a true ceiling of either of those guys with their rushing upside.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in the same area. I think most people are going to have Stroud in that top 9, and so it's just a matter of where in that and where they are, he is compared, like in the tier with other players.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So I think for me, if I probably view Burrow as 7, then if push comes to shove, I put Richardson at 6, put Burrow at 7, maybe Tua at 8, and then Stroud at 9.
And would you have him in the same tier as Burrow? It sounds like you're pretty close.
Yeah, I would say, Richardson I think could probably eke up or down, but I would probably shove him with his rushing upside up into the bottom of the
Like the
Lamar, Herbert.
Yeah.
Yep, Herbert, Lamar, and Richardson come together.
Yeah, that's interesting. This is a fun thought experiment. I hadn't even considered making a move like that as a contender, and that makes a lot of sense because it's almost like counterintuitive, right? Like, but
giving away the name brand.
You're buying low, right? You're trying to buy as low as you think you're going to be able to get, and especially if he opens up his rushing at all that we saw like against Georgia, like that's a whole nother facet that we haven't seen yet. But once he gets comfortable with the offense and like
all he needs is 30, 40 yards.
Lanes, like it could be interesting. And he might have a little bit of upside. He might have some Daniel Jones, maybe not 700 yards.
Not quite that. Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like some
what a
400
Mahomes,
yards
right?
rushing or something.
Yeah, like what Mahomes does, picks the right spots, takes what he gets without getting hit. You have to respect his legs a little bit, so you can't just drop totally into coverage. So, so some different thoughts there if you've got him or if you want him. But I think he's good enough that he's in that conversation now where he's somebody that you want to target before he gets another level higher in performance and more expensive.
I mean, he has 50 yards rushing, so on pace for a little over 200.
Yeah.
And this is not him taking off at all, So,
Right.
yeah, I don't know. Got me thinking now. Might have to check some teams out
If
when
we
hang up
if we
on
flip
this.
flop it here, yeah, if we flip flop it though and go to the bad, anything that you've got that comes to mind immediately for bad this last week?
For me, bad. I mean, man, Denver is bad. Like their defense, like you give up 70, and then Fields, who we've all been talking about how he's been struggling, they make him look like the second coming. He has never passed as well as he has. Throws 4 touchdowns. Started out 16 of 16 or whatever it was.
300 yards, yeah, first time.
So like it's interesting. It's just they're so bad. Their defense is awful, and I don't know, man. It's like it's scary if you have offensive, like if you have running backs on this team, like like Javonte, Piron's not doing shit.
Nope.
It's almost like Jaleel McLaughlin looks like the most. He's got the most juice out of any of them, and he's the guy that was picked by Peyton. So who knows with that?
Yeah.
But,
makes lineup decisions easier if you're debating between two players in a similar tier, similar skill set. Maybe their average points look the same so far. If one of them's playing the Broncos, I feel like that tips it pretty easily there.
Yeah.
Kind of like the old, was a few years ago in Arizona against your tight end. Just don't even look twice. Check the box and move on.
Yeah. It's just rough. It's going to be a bad year for them. And they play Kansas City 2 out of the next 3 weeks. So, like, I mean, they could be 0-7 before you know it.
Yeah.
So, they could be actually
Chicago
in the battle for.
Did Chicago hurt themselves by beating the Broncos?
Well, no, the Broncos won, didn't they?
Did
the Broncos
they?
Ended up winning. Yeah.
Oh, did they? I didn't. I honestly don't remember.
They were up 28-7, and then the Broncos came back. So I think that's right.
Gosh.
Yeah. I was just watching.
So lump the Bears defense in there.
So I guess they can't be 0-7 because the Bears ended up losing. So, but they're in rough shape.
Yeah, it's just an odd situation there in general.
Yeah, and then they just got rid of Randy Gregory. They cut him, and just a weird. Their defense just got worse. So.
Yep.
Yeah, it's It's like an extravaganza every week. Whoever's playing Denver. So.
Rumors of Carolina's looking for a wide receiver 1, right? So you have Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy's names being thrown around there as well.
Even T. Higgins could be an option. Like if they were talking about that on Nerds, and that makes a lot of sense. If they want to get aggressive and get T. Higgins, his contract's about to come up anyway. He's the most wide receiver 1 of those 3, but maybe they don't want to give up all the assets they'd have to give up for T. Higgins. So those are definitely a couple options, which makes that offense even worse. So
it's ridiculous.
Jeez, oh Pete. So yeah, it's fun. It's going to be a fun. It's just fun. It's not the Lions, to be honest with you. I'm just really happy to not experience that. So.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are looking really good in multiple phases right now, which is exciting.
It's exciting. This is what Cincinnati felt like, a few years ago, and the Bills started to feel when. So it's fun.
Last one, ugly. Before we have to lump the Broncos in there. Ugly for me, man, Monday Night Manning cast, watching Eli and Sean O'Hara try to talk.
That was awkward.
While Daniel Jones is getting obliterated. That was embarrassing, awkward, all the synonyms, but just ugly as far as the football they were trying to play. Couldn't find Waller, couldn't find anything beyond 4 yards down the field. It was a mess. Anything anything positive that you took away from that at all, from that experience, outside of how important is Saquon to your offense?
I mean, the only positive thing I took out of that was Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yep.
And he's going to be that short outlet, like
yep.
that
busy person.
Yep. That's the only thing. So if you can get Wan'Dale for for cheap, this might be the week to do it. Because he always gets peppered with targets when he plays. So
yeah,
it's just when he plays. So
yeah, that was a
rough watch for sure.
Yeah,
Giants look rough, and I mean, it's not like Seattle has this incredible defense. Although Witherspoon looked like a top tight end or top cornerback already. Like he looked awesome. And, but their defense overall isn't like.
Yeah, I mean they were getting good pressure, but I forgot which edge rusher they said remind them of Michael Bennett when he was there, which against that Giants line, I guess most people probably look like losing a boom there. So
yeah,
but
that was a rough watch for sure.
Let me see here. I was going to go kind of back to our original where the timeline came from, picking a few things up here. Off the timeline, we did have a trade come through that I think Jay Money wanted to talk through. It's a 1 QB question here.
Yep.
Let me see if I can find that.
I think that was in the timeline chat.
Was it in the chat? Okay.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah, 12 team. Only having to start 8, so you want to be top heavy here. Half PPR, and he's asking, does he want to have a 24 late first or Davante Adams?
I mean, that's a smash, Davante Adams, and I'll pay 2 late firsts for Davante Adams. To be honest with you, like in a start 8, like yeah, because what are you going to get at the end of the first round in a 1 QB? Like you're basically getting a mid. Those are essentially mid second rounders in Superflex. So, like, and you want the elite of the elite and start 8. So, I actually this offseason I traded 2 late firsts for Davante. So, I guess that answers at least
in a Superflex or in a 1 QB.
It was 1 QB.
Okay. Yeah. Totally. I agree. Yeah, you're looking for the top heavy. So yeah, if you can get Adams, Chase, Jefferson, Tyreek, Diggs, you get them.
And it just doesn't matter. He just gets targets. Like it's crazy. It doesn't matter what quarterback it is. Like he's just getting targets. And
it was crazy this week because he had 0 points at half.
Yeah.
I was watching a couple teams where I had him and it was like, well, shoot, age, whatever, getting dinged up. Maybe he realizes he wants to make
quarterback's awful.
Yeah, get some of his own business decisions out there. Maybe not going for stretching as far as he could, and then all of a sudden I look at the end of the game and he's double digits like any other week with Aiden O'Connell throwing at him.
Yep.
So
that's awesome. A pretty easy one for me, actually.
Yeah, I would agree. Speaking of CJ Stroud, going back to that, Jeff Milner here at geek_mill just tweeted a couple hours ago. He's starting CJ Stroud over Trevor Lawrence in week 5. How did we get here already? I mean, the sample size is big enough for me. And again, some of it's the matchup, right? Because Lawrence is in Europe again, going against the Bills defense, who's looked pretty good overall. Yeah. We couldn't stop. I mean, we held the Jets to a low total week 1. Lost on a special teams playing overtime. So we haven't been giving up a lot of points. We just couldn't score a lot. Allen looked rough that first week, but the defense overall looked good. So I get that. I absolutely get that, starting CJ Stroud. I don't even know who the Texans play this week, though. Do you know offhand?
I'll look it up, but
I don't think it really matters because I think he's going to be progressing still, and even if he hits kind of the average of what he's done each week here, including his week 1, he'll be locked into a top end QB2 performance this week.
Falcons.
Oh, Say less.
Yeah, so it's I mean, it's interesting because after week one, even you're like, you could say after week one, it's like, man, Trevor looks good. Like Ridley and him clicking, and then something happened, and it can't be Zay Jones got hurt.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the only thing I can pick out of the offense that changed from week one to week two, and it's they just not look great. They've just looked a little, just who'd they beat? They beat Atlanta, right? So like that in England.
Yep.
Which isn't saying much.
No.
And so it's they didn't necessarily look great either.
No, and Ridley's points, all of the stats that matter for wide receiver production have been declining week over week.
What do you do with him? Is he somebody that you, if you're in a contender, that you go after, and maybe somebody's like a little turned off by it, or is this somebody you're just kind of going, like?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I was listening to Matt Waldman, a recent episode of his, and he was talking about, his general philosophy is when you've got multiple talents and a team, you go for the cheaper, right? You go back to what is it, The Beautiful Mind, and the principle there. You don't go after the prettiest girl in the bar. You find the second prettiest girl in the bar because everybody else is going after the first one. So, in this offense, it's Christian Kirk, right? And until the cost to get both of them is close enough that Ridley becomes a value, I think you're still looking at a Christian Kirk or Zay Jones even while he's injured. I don't know that, if somebody's truly panicking and you can get, again, the cost is similar enough between Ridley and Kirk, then I do it. But if there's more than a second round pick difference between the two, give me Christian Kirk.
Yeah, I don't hate that. By the way, DLF just updated their website.
I saw that. Saw that on Instagram. I haven't played with it yet. How's it look?
I mean, it doesn't look that different. But I think it saves your sign-in a lot longer, which is
Thank goodness. Love that.
Yeah, so it's running a little slower than I experienced before, though. So maybe they just need to.
Yeah, let it ride. I've got another one here, going back to another guy that we talked about. 12-team Dynasty PPR Superflex as a rebuilding team. Would you rather have Hollywood Brown, or would you rather get a package of Jaden Reed, a late 24 second, and a random third in 25?
So Reed, a second and a third.
Yep.
Or who?
Hollywood Brown.
And
as a rebuilder.
Yeah, I would be okay making that move.
And taking the package?
I think so. Like, if you're just looking to get points off your roster, off your, out of your starting lineup, Reed is still, there's some hope there. I don't necessarily think he'll ever be Hollywood Brown. You could also just hold and wait until Kyler is about to come back and people could get excited and you might be able to get more. But if that's the offer and you want to get him off your roster, I'm fine with that. I love Hollywood Brown, so it'd be harder for me to make that move. But like, I don't think it's out of the one standard deviation where I could say it's like ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's within the bounds of reason.
It's not Zach Wilson and Baker for Burrow.
Correct.
Yeah, I voted on this poll, and I'm in the minority of the 36% that said hang on to Hollywood. Because he's another one that's also been tossed around as possibly, the wide receiver one that Carolina is looking for. You got a couple aging guys there with, Chark can't stay on the field, and, Thielen is kind of, I think, having his last gasp right now.
Yeah, you just need somebody who can separate a little bit. And they don't really have that guy. You have the 50-50 guy. You have Thielen, who kind of is a vacuum cleaner, but he doesn't like really separate. So Hollywood would actually be a good compliment. Actually, probably more so than T. Higgins, to be honest.
Yeah. So So yeah, so I think for now, even if I'm rebuilding, I would probably hold on to him for a couple more weeks, like you said, whether it's Kyler coming back or maybe he has a couple more good weeks where you can really build in the value and find another fringe contender who needs that receiver to put them over the edge for the season and maybe squeeze a little bit more out of that. So I personally would want to go a little bit a little more consolidated here than Jaden Reed in the second next year. But I get the idea that you could get the points off your roster now, again, depending what your league setup is and how you organize the draft next year.
And it probably depends on how active the league is also, because like if you feel like you can make a lot of maneuvers with those broken down assets, like I think that that's something to consider. Or if it's not an active league, maybe you don't want to make that move because you end up with a bunch of kind of whatever
pieces.
Picks, and you hold on to the guy who actually can produce.
Yeah. Last thing here, since we don't have anything in the chat coming through right now, seeing a lot of people the last couple of days on the timeline just throwing in all of their waiver wire scoops for the week, whether it's redraft or not. But I guess anybody on your kind of deep on your radar that you're looking ahead in your leagues that you've put waivers in. I think most of them have run by now. But anybody that you put some waivers in for last night that you were excited to get today?
I mean, I don't know, that I was excited to get, but a lot like Ronnie Rivers is somebody that's interesting to me, the backup for the Chargers running back.
Okay.
Kelly doesn't look fantastic, so
Nope.
maybe Rivers takes over. And I'd heard some things in the preseason where people were really excited to see what Ronnie Rivers could do. He is the return guy too, so he's kind of got a little bit of juice in that regard. Tight end premiums, I was adding Ogletree, the tight end from Indy, in a few leagues. He's interesting. He's just played at Youngstown State, so a smaller school. It's his second year. He's starting to get some play. If you look at his snap shares, it's kind of going up a little bit. That team's just so funky because they have so many tight ends. So that's I don't necessarily know that he's ever going to be it, but he's somebody that's interesting that if he pops a few times, there could be a lot of excitement for him. And maybe this is what this team is they just want a bunch of big physical bodies that, it's a little easier for Richardson to hit, and so maybe that's the plan. I don't know. I'll have to think about some other one. I've been picking up that DeMercado, the Arizona running back. He's starting to get a little bit more play. I know they have Keontae Ingram that maybe when he comes back, but DeMercado was the guy who where he played at TCU, I think, and he actually the starter got hurt and he ended up playing really well in their bowl game. So somebody to just keep an eye on. I've been trying to throw him on, if I have extra roster spot here or there. But mainly it's running backs that I'm looking to add. Demario Davis, wide receiver for the Chargers. He was getting a little bit of play in the backfield and some more targets than Quentin Johnston.
Quentin Johnston, yeah. That was a rough one.
But yeah, that's about it. That comes to mind. How about you?
Yeah, I honestly didn't put a whole lot of waivers in this week. Most of my rosters are already kind of full with the bench churners already.
Good players, yeah.
And then, and then also being in leagues with people like you who are already putting some of these deeper guys on their roster. It's kind of hard to come by some of these folks. But I was definitely I picked up Ogletree in a couple places in the tight end premiums, which was. We'll see what happens, and so hopefully something shakes out there. At some point they've got to get some continuity, but yeah, I'm kind of the same way, looking to see, can I stash somebody that is an injury or two away from making something happen. So But yeah, that's all that I found here on the timeline this week, and yeah, it feels like we got through a good bit, kind of a variety of different players, and yeah, a couple themes there. It'll be interesting to see for the couple teams that I have Burrow on. I think I may go and make a couple of those offers and see what happens with a CJ Stroud, and see if those teams are open to something like that, or if they're kind of digging in and waiting to see how high is high down the road here.
Is there anybody else you're thinking about adding or trying to unload? Whether you think that somebody's undervalued or overvalued at this point? I was trying to think
as far as
is T Higgins a guy worth, like we talked about that last week? Like T Higgins might be an ad. Now he got hurt.
Yeah.
Is he more of an ad now?
Yeah, I put a couple offers out, a couple of packages that included him, and they didn't even get a counter back for either one. But I think people are waiting to see. I haven't found too many folks. I did see a couple of trades. Gosh, I forget which league it's in, where he was a part of a package that I think he and CMC were moved to a contending team, and then the rebuilding team got a quarterback. I think they might have gotten Kyler plus or something back. So that was an interesting one to see he was a part of there. But yeah, I certainly like T Higgins. I've liked him since he came out. So I would be open to going after him still, and maybe with the bye weeks coming up, if people need the depth, need starters, you could maybe add a little bit more pressure that way to get there. I think for me, I tend to get impatient with quarterbacks. So I've only got, I think, 2 teams that have Bryce Young. So I'm kind of trying to figure out how long do I want to wait there on Carolina to see what happens with him as the first pick overall. You got to believe that he's got to be NFL ready. I forget, was it, I listened to the same Dummies episode you were talking about. I forget if they talked about him or if it was, I think maybe it was Waldman talking about him, where, the game seems to be slow enough for him. He's processing well. Just doesn't have maybe the weapons yet to really maybe show his true potential. So I think that's one where I don't have a real good pulse on where people's values of him are, because his value, I picked him up, I think, at the 105 in one of the leagues that I got him, because he dropped there.
Same.
So I think that's still kind of indicative of where a lot of people are with his value. So he's one that if somebody came knocking, I would certainly entertain the idea and try to build something that I felt good about. It's just kind of, in that vein, what do you think the difference is for you between him and Stroud at this point?
I mean, I don't think a second's going to get it done. Could you do why would you do that, right? If you have Stroud, because you have a guy who's already shown it versus a guy who hasn't. I almost think you'd have to do like Bryce Young and a late first for Stroud and a second, maybe. And maybe they don't even take that. Yeah. Maybe they just want Bryce Young in the first for Stroud.
You're not getting an age difference. You're not, adding a whole lot of other value there. So,
yeah, I'm pulling up Stroud right now to see if there's any trades that happened in the last couple of days. I did look up T Higgins. There's a T Higgins for DeAndre Swift trade. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so since yesterday, there's just a lot of moving parts on this one. Stroud, Everett, and Achane.
Okay.
For Goddard, Gibson, and 2 firsts, 24 firsts. Who knows how early.
Yeah.
But you got to figure Achane's now a first, right?
At least.
Everett's probably a little bit more than Antonio Gibson. So then you got a first and Goddard for Stroud, minus the difference between Everett and Antonio Gibson.
Yeah.
So Goddard and a first for Stroud-ish. There's another one, Jalen Hurts and Dawson Knox for C.J. Stroud and Sam Laporta.
Wow.
That's a fun one.
That is.
I don't necessarily know I do that, but if you're high on Laporta,
yeah.
I mean, honestly, like,
especially if it's a 2-point premium or something like that.
Like, how do you handle that, right? Because like Laporta, like, is kind of in the same boat as Stroud, right? Like, he started out really well his rookie year. I mean, we've seen this happen before where people kind of taper down a little bit. So people get too excited, which we might be doing that. I don't know. But there's enough there's enough of a signal on both of them to make us think that they are who we see. But I have a hard time giving up Jalen Hurts.
I would. Something else to hedge there a little bit.
Yeah. But that's fun. If you're in a rebuild, that could be a fun trade.
Yeah, which I mean, even then, like, what you add their presumably late second or something like that. Yeah, I would think you should be able to squeeze a little bit more out if you've got Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
And if he's your best quarterback, your only quarterback, maybe.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that's interesting to see that those two are in the same.
Yeah, I'm pulling Bryce Young to see if there's anything interesting.
I mean, it's basically Jalen Hurts. I mean, Dawson Knox has minimal value at this point.
Yeah.
I think people are waiting for Kincaid to take over. I mean, people are waiting for that to happen, once he got drafted there.
Young in a third for a 24 and 26 first. And a 10-teamer.
Okay.
Lamar for Young, Addison, a second and a third. Bryce Young for Garrett Wilson, a first and a fourth. Wow.
I would take Garrett Wilson in the first.
Same. I think that's somebody freaking out about. That was on the 30th of September, so this was before this last week. People were a little bit lower on him. Bryce Young for ETN.
Straight up?
Yeah.
Yeah, take the quarterback there in super flex.
I agree with that. Yeah, so, I mean, but it looks like Young is definitely not pulling the same. I mean, are you motivated to pay that? Like, first and Young for Stroud?
That's tough.
Like, I'm really learning to, like, maybe not worry about trading my late firsts anymore. Like, I always wanted to hold on to them, but like, I feel like there's just so much, like, it's just you're lucky if you hit, right? You might hit, but you might not. And I think it's probably more unlikely you hit than you do, like, because even if you get a player that contributes, it doesn't mean that they're going to be a great player.
Right. I mean, this year, maybe year 112, you were lucky to get Laporta if you liked him better than Meyer. You maybe took Achane there if you were running back needy and you went to fill a position instead of.
You might have taken Bigsby because you were excited.
Yep.
Like, I mean, you could have taken. There's a lot of players you could have taken that didn't hit. Even in the last few years. I mean, I think we see more that hit than we think. Because I feel like.
I mean, Garrett Wilson was one of those guys. He was a late first.
Yeah.
Jalen Waddle was a late first. So
wasn't Wilson a top 6 guy?
Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. He was like a
Last
top
year?
5 guy. Yeah, because it was I'm gonna have to pull that up because isn't that the year with Treylon Burks and
Drake
London and Jameson and Olave? And Wilson was one of the top 5 picks because Olave and Jameson were traditionally the last 2 that were taken
in that tier. Okay.
Yeah. So you could have gotten Treylon Burks before him sometimes.
Yep.
So
that's wild. So yeah, I don't know. That'd be interesting. Again, depends on some of what your team makeup is, but yeah, I think that's probably a healthier perspective to take, especially if it gets you to somebody that you like and you're more confident in. So if you're in that place where you're kind of lukewarm on a guy like Bryce Young, you're not sure what to do. you're contending otherwise, and you can get a player that's already proven in the first 4 weeks that he's doing it. And again, same age, you have the same presumable runway as far as years of service on your team. And with, limited weapons, nobody, I saw a tweet earlier, we're all going out there making offers for the Houston offense like we thought we would be 3 months ago.
Yeah. And that trade with the Laporta things got me thinking. We were talking about this. I'm in the Dynasty Theory Discord. Good dudes. Okay. Definitely, it's free to get in there. So anybody that wants to hop in there, hop in. There's also a Patreon area, but you can get a lot of the parts for free. But I actually asked them, like, what do you need to add to Laporta or to Pitts to get Laporta now? And like, it's pretty crazy how shit changes so quickly, Like, I don't even know the answer to that. Like, you're getting a guy who's actually playing and getting points every week, or you're getting a guy who has hope at some point.
Yep.
Like, But
I forget who tweeted it earlier. Yeah, we can. But speaking to Pitts, I forgot who put it up there yesterday, I think, on Twitter, that if his name wasn't Pitts, you would have dropped him by now.
It's true. Like, redraft, I would drop him for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. A couple sneaking into the 11th hour from Calvo. What's up, fellas? Would y'all trade Jamar for DeAndre Swift or Kenneth Walker? Receivers are CD, Amon-Ra, and Pittman. RBs are Madison and Rachaad White.
I mean, I would check to see what Amon-Ra's injury is, because he's got an abdominal issue. If it's start 3 wide receivers, I would be a little more hesitant until I knew what happened to Amon-Ra. There was one of the doctors was like, hopefully it's not a sports hernia. So if it's a sports hernia, I'd be a little worried. But otherwise, yes, I probably would. I'm not super happy with those running backs, so I would probably trade Jamar for probably either of them.
Yeah. Are you assuming this is for redraft or for Dynasty?
I'm assuming it's redraft, yeah.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. And again, we talked a little bit about where we are kind of on Burrow and that offense in general now. And do you have a preference between Swift or Walker if you were going to?
I mean, I'm biased. So, Kenneth Walker played for Michigan State, my alma mater. So, I would take him. But, I mean, Swift, man, it looks like he's taken a hold of that job. So, I would rather Kenneth Walker, though. I just feel like he's a little more dynamic. So, and they're just definitely more of a run offense that has more touchdown opportunity than anything within the 5-yard line. You almost think it's going to Jalen Hurts,
Yeah.
How about you?
I could see that. I'm probably tilted the other way a little bit. I like Swift and the work that they're giving him. I do agree. The touchdowns are going to be tough to come by. I don't know what the sweet spot is, and have to break a 40-yard run to get there. Because even once you get inside the red zone, you don't even have to be inside the 5, but you've got plenty of other targets. Yeah. AJ Brown. Devonta Smith can get open, and all he needs is a sliver of daylight to make a catch there, and you still got Goddard roaming around. Yeah. So. I would agree. Walker's probably more touchdown dependent or touchdown reliable. But Swift is on the better offense that presumably puts up more points. So,
and I feel like Swift doesn't have as much competition behind him. I could be worried. I gotta say Charbonnet does look like a good back that can complement Walker really well. And when they need physical runs, which goal line runs, I gotta think that they're gonna be going with Charbonnet because he has trucked some people when he's played. So
yeah, doesn't sound like you have a bad option there, but the short answer is yes. I think we'd both say go for that move.
Yep.
So then from Ventro here, would you trade James Cook, James Conner, Devonta Smith, and Tyler Lockett for Justin Jefferson? Jordan Addison, Chris Godwin, Zach Moss, full PPR 14 team. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, totally. I'm just wondering if this is Dynasty or not. If it's 14 team, man, it makes me think it's Dynasty, which makes me think like this is a ridiculous haul, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like Addison and Devonta Smith aren't that different in value.
Nope. Godwin's worth both the running backs.
Then you got Connor, Cook, and Lockett for Jefferson, Godwin, and Moss. Like, yeah. I mean, I understand it's 14 teams, so like you're giving up what 1, 2, 3, 4 starters for 3 starters. It's redraft. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a little closer. But Jefferson's a fucking stud. And then
he is.
You know, like Addison's going to be getting more and more. Godwin, you know, you started to see him start to get peppered when Evans got hurt. I mean, if you're good at running back, totally.
Yeah. I mean, Zach Moss is going to be equivalent to either Cook or Connor as long as Jonathan Taylor is.
I mean, it's a little bit more risk on your depth, but if you're good at running back, I say for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I saw Justin Jefferson, and that's why I said yes. So that's also a little bit of bias here.
I mean, but he's the best wide receiver by far. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, there's others that are going to score like him, but like, I mean, he just, yeah.
Week in and week out.
I don't feel as comfortable with Devonta Smith, Lockett. I mean, like I like them, but starting RBs would be Khalil Herbert and Moss. Okay, so you're giving up your starters basically.
Yeah. Which, I mean, even then, you know, can you turn Addison into another running back if you needed to? I know some people get a little bit tentative when you start having two, you know, people a couple years ago was, you know, is it okay to have Chase and why can't I think of it? We just talked about him. Higgins, yeah. Is it okay to have both Chase and Higgins on the same, you know, roster? Like, yeah, I mean, at that point when Joe Burrow is supporting both of those, you know, we're watching Kirk Cousins support a ridiculous amount of volume in the pass game right now. So, and yeah, this
my
is not
your FFPC league is I have Jefferson and Addison.
Yeah,
I'm totally
fine
with it.
This trade is not your last trade of the year either.
Yeah,
you know, hopefully you can.
I would definitely make a move to like add to your running backs, but like, I mean, Herbert's not terrible. Like it's 14 teams, so it's not like you have to have the studs.
Yep.
You know,
take a page out of your book there, Bill. Yeah, just kind of patchwork what you can, scour the waiver wire. You know, be a week ahead of.
I mean, now if this is like a start like 12 or 13 or something, then my answer changes. But if it's like a start 10, then I really like that trade.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Love hearing some different redraft styles out there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's nice to see 14 teamer. That's cool.
Well, Bill, I told my wife, you know, because it's just the two of us, you know, hey, this should be pretty efficient. We'll be right at the 60-minute mark, but you know, we're doing Josh proud here. Hoping he feels better, but yeah, we covered a lot. It was great to get a couple questions at the end here. Thank you guys for jumping on and throwing those in there. Always makes it a little more interesting to, you know, kind of think on our feet for a minute. So hopefully everybody that was able to join us here had some fun. And then if you're listening on podcasts, thank you for taking a little bit of time and hearing two guys kind of ramble on about, you know, their thoughts, their teams, all of our personal biases and opinions that, you know, we're trying to sort out in our own leagues. So hopefully something in there was helpful or interesting to you, but give us a rate and review if you have a minute. We'd love to hear, you know, anything that we can do to, you know, make this fun for the rest of the season here as we go. But outside of that, Bill, you know, it's crazy to think that we're pushing past 25%. A quarter of the season's going to be over after tomorrow.
Yeah,
that's and we're marching toward the culmination of this year. So again, thank you to everyone that was here in the chat, and hit us up on Twitter. You got Bill at Super Duper Flex here. You got me at DR_PRA. Hit up Josh. I know he loves to answer some of the start sit questions on Saturday night, Sunday morning on the X. So tag him in some stuff. But I think we've done a good job, and I think your dog is waiting for me to say that we are done, Bill.
Late